you need motivation, yeah, to get through the day, just tune in, cause we'll make a way. Positivity. So if you need environment to make a change, just start with today and tune into Pancake Monday, Pancake Monday, with Pastor OGS, OGS, oh yes, oh yes. Pancake Monday, Pancake Monday, with Pastor OGS, OGS, oh yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, welcome to another edition of Man Cave Monday. And I am so excited. You have no idea how excited I am tonight to welcome a very, very special guest. I know I say that about all my guests, but you all know how special this edition is. We are in the midst of Women's History Month. Just coming off the heels of the celebration of Black History Month last month, but I believe every day and every month ought to be Black History Month. And certainly my guest means a great deal to me. She is the first woman to ever come into the Man Cave space, and she was laid on my heart a long time ago to come into this space. And so I thought, what better way to introduce Women's History Month right here in the Man Cave than to have my own auntie, my daddy's baby sister. Her name is Reverend Janet Stuart. She is live in Cairo, Georgia tonight. Auntie, how you doing?
I am well. Grateful to be in this space.
I'm glad to have you. I'm excited. This is just gonna be so amazing. I can't believe you're actually here.
I cannot believe I was asked to be a part of the Man Cave.
Well, I'm grateful that you would spend this time with us. And to all of you who are still connecting right now, go ahead, of course, and share this experience with someone. We welcome your comments and your feedback. And if you don't mind, go ahead and like our YouTube channel as well. You can find it, Pastor Jermaine Simmons. The link there is already in the chat. And we want to continue to build that base as well. But I want to jump right in to this conversation. You are a phenomenal woman and a woman of God. And as I said, my daddy's baby sister. And we're going to talk a lot about your roots and your journey on tonight. But for those that don't know you, for those that have not had the benefit, of meeting you, just tell us a little bit about, yourself, your background. When Daddy came on here, of course, he talked about Cairo, Georgia, the roots that he comes from. But just talk to us about yourself.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess probably one of my greatest callings is having been called to be a mother. And I am a mother of two beautiful daughters. And at this point, I actually have 8 grandchildren.
Mama.
And so that's probably one of the things that I'm most proud about. And I speak highly about it because they've turned out to be some pretty great children and have brought out some pretty great grandchildren. And so that's one of the things I think that stands out great about me. I grew up right here in Grady County, Cairo, Georgia.
Yeah.
Had very different experiences than your dad, of course.
Mm-hmm.
He can tell some stories that I can truly not identify with. Having grown up in a family of 9, it was pretty unique in that although I grew up with 8 siblings, I did not have the privilege of growing up in the same house with all of them. Many of them I was actually introduced to because they had actually been grown, moved out, had families, they were away in college. And so growing up in my house, it was probably 4 of us for a short period. And those 2 older siblings, which were sisters, went off to college as well. So it was just my brother and I. So we lived a different kind of life than our siblings. Some would say that I'm spoiled. Had an opportunity to be in the first of the school integration. And so I was one of the first African-American children to end up in the integrated school in my class. There was no one there that looked like me. But because of the way I was raised when I was in that classroom, I never saw anything, never thought that there was anything that was different about them than there was about me, other than our color was different.
Yeah.
But in terms of my abilities, my skills, never once even thought that I was inferior on any level.
Wow.
So I started out with the classroom not being blended, not looking like anybody I know,
Yeah.
and moving through the grades and the years. I believe that opportunity really gave me a kickstart of having the esteem that I had, because
Yeah.
once it became even more integrated, I was able to mix and mingle among all people. Just never felt uncomfortable about that. Went through the Grady County school system, grew up, um, moved to New Jersey back in '84,
I
and
remember that.
raised my babies there,
Yeah.
and went to college there, attended Jersey City State University, got my degree, had some great experiences, lived with you and your family.
I remember that.
I
Yes.
was big sister, I think, at that
Yes.
time. I don't know
You were
that I
the
was
fun
necessarily
auntie. You were the cool auntie to have around. It helped balance my parents out a little bit.
Oh, you think so? But definitely, the New Jersey experience gave me an experience that really changed my life. It takes nothing away from my journey in Grady County. It takes nothing away from my mother and father and everything that they instilled in me. But there was a different level of learning and exposure that I received in New Jersey. One, being under your father's tutelage. There were certain things that he expected and standards that he set that really grew me. I'll never forget one day I went I had an issue with school, and I needed to talk to someone to get a resolution. And I went in and talked to somebody, and they told me they needed to get with the president, and they would get back with me. And so when I got home, he said, "Well, what happened?" And I shared that I'd spoken to someone and they were going to get back with me on it. He said, "Well, who did they need to talk to?" And I said, "Well, they needed to talk to the president." He said, "Well, that's who you need to talk to." And I thought to myself, I'm going to leave here and go talk to the president. The president just
Wow.
couldn't talk to anybody. And so at that moment, he said to me, because evidently he could read my expression, and he said, "Anytime you're doing anything, you go to the top. You don't let someone else advocate for you, those things
Wow.
that you need. You go to the top." And I
Wow.
walked in that school the next day with him on my shoulder, saying, "Okay, we're going to the top." And spoke to that secretary, and she looked at me as if that was just something people asked, and opened the doors. And the man talked to me, and I got what I needed.
Wow.
And so that was a lesson learned, but it helped to open doors for me, because when I walked to a door, I felt like I deserved to be at that door, because he says you start at the top.
So that speaks then to your roots, your upbringing. You talked about the expectations and the standard. And we certainly can't talk about you as a woman without talking about your mother and my grandmother, Miss
Yes,
Pinky
yes,
Simmons, who is legendary.
yes, sir.
She and, your late father, my late grandfather, Dr. Perry Simmons Sr., legendary within the community and beyond. What are some of the things, from the women in your family, Grandma Pinky, Moana, that's my great grandmother and your grandmother. These are strong, determined women who provided your foundation, and so many others, Aunt Lillian, Aunt Ruby, Aunt Naomi, who you are named after. All of these different women in the Simmons and Norwood and Chester clan. Talk to me about that upbringing.
Well, for one, it's like none other. You can't buy it. You're talking about some women that were very strong outside of their era. These were women who were, they didn't just go get a job, but in many cases they created jobs. From the years of my very early years, I remember my mother opening a store in the community and having this store, and this store was filled with groceries. So this was the place where the community went to pick up those groceries that they wouldn't go to the store, to the bigger grocery store to get. But this was immediate. And I saw her be an entrepreneur in that store. And then when my brother needed a job, she established a daycare where she opened up this daycare and had him overseeing and running things. But once again, seeing her be that entrepreneur, yes, she did at some point during my older years get a job because my mom was actually a stay-at-home mom with me. And anything she did, she created that job within the community.
And she was a midwife too for just about everybody in Grady County.
She was. She was a midwife, and many times I took those trips to the country and sat on the porches at night and waited for those to hear the sound of that baby cry. But like her and like her sisters and my cousins and even my sisters, you see nothing but strength. These were women that you strive to be like because they had that perseverance. They were go-getters. Growing up among them, you didn't ever get the idea that you did anything other than to strive for excellence. College was never something that I thought I could not do. It was always expected, whether I thought I could do it or not. It was always expected. Higher education. And if you didn't do higher education, whatever it was that you were great at, be great at it. Don't do anything.
Right.
And they presented that. They didn't just talk it, they presented it. Even in, with my mom's sisters, her being a midwife, having teachers, having a registered nurse, during a period when most Black people were in fields, picking cotton and doing those kinds of things. Their father and their mother was getting them prepared for higher education. And so, forever, that's what I've always been around, very positive. They pour into you positivity.
Yeah.
That was just something that it's almost like that's what breathes through me.
Yeah.
And as a result of being around those positive people.
And you've done that with your daughters, with your grandchildren, particularly your granddaughters. Like I said, you were not always you were not only the fun aunt or the cool aunt, but you were also the affirming aunt. Like you were always encouraging those of us who were younger to do our best and to be our best. You were a listening ear. I can easily tell stories about, my struggles as a teen. And the one time I was bold enough to run away from home, I ran to your house, just as a place of safety. I'm transparent. I don't hold back. But with this being Women's History Month, can you talk a little bit about the importance of women affirming one another? Because the culture that, subscribes to jealousy and envy and even digging ditches for one another. We can see the reality shows with Black women throwing drinks in each other's faces and snatching each other's hair out. It's so counterintuitive to who we are as a people. But how important is it for women to affirm one another?
Okay, and I want to first agree that it's really not our nature to be catfighting, to be against each other. It is so important that Black women affirm each other. I think it's so important in that we are a reflection of each other. It's only a woman at times can only tell another woman about certain things about life, and so it's just uplifting. And I can't think of a word, Jermaine.
It's empowering, it's uplifting, it's affirming, all those things that we should do for one another. But I think we let society and the other cultures kind of determine, because like you say, it's not our nature. That's not community. I can remember you and cousin Levon and others who introduced Kwanzaa, and Scott and them and Deborah and them in our family. Those principles of Kwanzaa, being introduced to cooperative economics and just that self-determination, but it's affirmed by the village. Like you introduced all those terms to us. And I can remember as far back as being 3 and 4 years old, remembering those kind of affirmations coming from you and your generation of women in our family.
Yes. Well, and I say again that, it's sitting down and having those conversations that only women can have with each other. We go through things in our lifetime that is very different than any other species. Men have their thing that they go through.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing like the struggles that women go through, the experiences that women have that only women can speak to women about.
Yes.
What some my role models definitely didn't have to go far to outside of my family to be able to have access to great role models. My parents, of course, aunts, but also you mentioned LaVon. She is someone who was a great example of what it means to pour into and to encourage Black women. She was one of those people who would tell you, perfection is not necessarily one of those things that when you look at it, it looks like you've never had any failures. Perfection is that person who keeps getting up and getting better and better and better. She was one that represented, my door is always open. You have a place to talk, a place to share. And the no judgment thing, if you have the ability to be able to sit next to a sister who has gone through something, the no judgment. I have been privileged in my lifetime to have people to come and sit, with me and share some stories that I may have never necessarily had the opportunity, had the experience myself. I've met with young Black women who have lived with men and stayed with men who have gone through that thing of molestation or having their children be molested, but yet they stay with that man. How do you talk to a sister like that? Number one, you look past the fact that she's more than that moment. There had to have been some serious things going on within that young woman's life to put herself, to allow herself to stay in that position. Yeah. And so, no, I may not have been there, but I could talk to that sister. And I can tell that sister about the fact that, she's a reflection of who God is.
Yeah.
And, and when God created her, he created her with all the special things that's within inside of her. And so there are some people who never get that message, who were never told that you are special.
Yeah.
You hear women say, well, I came from a family that had a history of this, and there was nothing good about me.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to sit with that sister and talk about those good things that are about you, the things that are inside of you that you may not have tested it yet, to realize that there's something in you. Number one, because you've survived a life like that. You've survived a childhood and you're here. Yeah. To be encouraged people, to be able to encourage people to move out of whatever that is that they're in, to move to their next. Because we all got some nexts. And although again, I may not have gone through what the sister went through, but I've had my tribe.
Yeah.
I've had my ups, I've had my downs. I've been privileged to be able to have a family that I can lean on. But Jermaine, there have been times in my life where family couldn't fix it, and it's times like that where the Lord gives you that space to be able to say, now you got to lean on me.
Yeah.
And I can tell a sister about a God that they can lean on that is like none other, and people don't necessarily have an ear for you when they're in their lowest places.
Yeah.
But if I can get down and be able to identify with you and say, hey, this is my story.
Right.
And be able to share your story. People need to know that we're human.
And I just want to interject, because there's 2 points I think we need to put in the chat tonight. And that is, first of all, you are more than that moment. You are more than that moment. Somebody need to put that in the chat. And then secondly, we all have a next. We all have a next. I'm here. I heard you say that no matter what the moment was, we all have a next. And then thirdly, you've said, and I think it is so powerful, that sometimes people may not have an ear for you, at first. But what I believe is people will have an ear for you if they feel like you have a heart for them.
Yes.
I believe that. When you are transparent like you just were, to say, hey, I've struggled too. I may not have been there, but I have been over here. And so I have a heart for you. And I think when a person knows you have a heart for them, they will have an ear for you.
Absolutely. agree. I absolutely agree. And I have to say that I coined that same phrase for my life. This moment does not define who I am, and it helps me to move forward because when you are a called woman or man of God, you put standards on your because you're trying to be the best light that you can be.
Mm-hmm.
But every day we fail. Every day we miss the mark.
Right.
And I have to tell myself every day, yes, I'm getting new grace and mercy, but for me, I need to confirm this is not, my final moment. There's
Right.
more to me, and this moment doesn't define who I am so that I can move to my next.
Well, let's talk about that. Because not only are you a mom, no, not only are you, a grandmother, as though nobody can tell by looking at you. You could very well be my older sister by a few years.
I would agree with
Yes,
you.
absolutely. But you are also in the ministry. You are a called minister, a called preaching minister. How much, or can you speak to the challenge that has been, your experience just as a woman in ministry, some of the walls and the ceilings that you have had to break through, and then I'll share some insights as well. But just as a woman in ministry and in the church structure, what have been some of the hurdles and some of the walls and ceilings that you've had to go through?
Well, let me say this first that when I finally got to the point of accepting my call, what came with it was clear understanding that I was not to spend my time defending it. I've met many women who, when I hear them give a word, they use that platform sometimes to try to encourage or to get people to believe that their calling is true, or thinking that that is a battle that's theirs. So when I got my call and finally, I say finally accepted it because I didn't want it. But when I got it and accepted it, that was something that I promised that I would not do. I would not use my platform to fight and to get anyone to believe or to trust, because my calling is between me and him. And so, because I was sure and very sure, when I came upon people who had difficulty with my calling, and truly grown up in this area with the group of ministers that I happened to be a part of, they really did have a hard time accepting it. I've had my pastor to be thrown to the wolves and for licensing me. You have ministers that when you walk into a church, Jermaine, they immediately remember who you are, and you're invited to the pulpit. I know not to even expect that when I walk in, and when I do, I'm usually surprised. Also, down here in the South, it's almost an automatic. When a minister walks in the church, they just immediately walk to the pulpit. Some of them are so friendly that they are, have that relationship. When I came into it, I didn't expect it to happen automatically. So it wasn't something that hurt so much when I saw it. What I decided very on that whatever issues people had with me, I will allow my messages that went out to speak, and prayerfully they would grow past where they are. And then I would just look down and decide that it's a loss on them, because there may be somebody in their sanctuary who they're pastoring that may have a calling on their life but won't speak up because of them. But I can certainly say that walls are still there. Ministers will not invite me to their church because I've been licensed, not because I say I've been called to preach, but because I've been licensed. That's a privilege that my convention evidently does not support in terms of women being licensed and given that license to preach. So not being able to preach in certain pulpits, you're not going to get an invitation to do it. I was given invitations to speak, when I was just a speaker.
Right.
But when I got that title, that door was not open. Sitting in a room next to a table full of men and having them talk back and forth, the ministers, about me present, while I'm present and I'm there. And I think what hurt the most out of all things is to have an earshot of that and know that these are the same people that my father mentored. These are the same people that I saw him open doors and make way for them. So that was very hurting, hurtful to have that take place. But even the way women in general are treated, and I would be included in that in terms of the opportunities that are present.
Yes.
For example, trainings are being put together, and women are not included. Sometimes, if you are included, you're asked to carry a woman's role. Would you do the secretarial duties of this particular thing? And why would you ask a minister to come to a convention or a training and do secretarial things?
Right.
Even within the church, you're still asked to do those things that are strictly female oriented. I get invited to speak for Women's Day. Just recently, I was asked to do a Father's Day message. I felt so challenged because, that's not something that's being asked. And so you're still kind of pushed to that stereotypical roles that you would give to women.
And if I could interject, love that the transparency that you share. And it's no coincidence that we are in the season that we're in. I think God has used even this pandemic season and this political season, this racial stuff we're dealing with, to really drive home the idea that God is on the side of the oppressed, whomever that may be, whether that's us as Black people, whether it's women or minorities or children or elderly people, the poor, whoever is disenfranchised in this season, God is bringing them to the forefront. And so I'm in a series right now, and even those that are watching that are my members, they haven't heard this part of it, but I've hinted at it. I'm in a series called Breakthrough on Sunday mornings, and I'm addressing various ills within our community where oppressed people are affirmed by God. Well, again, Black folks, women, poor people, children, older people, whoever's marginalized, God is on their side. But the way I flip it is whoever the oppressor is, God holds them accountable to help the oppressed break through. So if we're talking about Black people, I've argued these first couple of weeks that God expects for the dominant culture, if that's white people, then so be it, to facilitate the breakthrough, to play a part in the undoing of the system that has held these people down. And so in a few weeks, I'm going to get to women and how, yes, women should affirm each other. Yes, women should uplift each other. But God also holds men responsible for the systems that we have either created or perpetrated that have served to the undermining of you as a woman. And so when you mention the men at the table and their whispers and their systems and their practices, God holds us, and I'm talking about us men, accountable for how we treat, in this case, a marginalized and oppressed group of people, which means that if you are going to, and I'm going to use an uncomfortable word here, if you are going to preach in certain platforms, somebody's got to let you. That's the uncomfortable word. They got to let you, allow you. If a woman is to become CEO, well, men have got to let that happen. In the same spirit of Pharaoh, let my people go. Allow my people to be free so they can serve me. So not that you can't do it without a man, but the fact that we have been the oppressors in that regard. The fact that we have used the word of God to hold women down as a gender for so long, then we also are held accountable for undoing and playing a part in your rise to the proper place that God wants you to be. What you think about that?
Well, number one, it takes me also back to your original question when we were talking about affirming women. And I just do believe that, yes, once the door is open and you're able to get through that door, you know what it took to get there. You know what it has taken to stay there. You've had those experiences, and so you take that, and that's that thing that you pass on to the next, because it is very difficult to get through that door. Right now, I am probably two out of the state of Georgia that holds the position of executive director in the organization that I'm in. That's a door that's been knocked down, that has been held by a Caucasian woman, Caucasian man, men of other nationalities, but definitely not an African American female. And I'm not sure if there's even an African American male, but I do know that there's only two people in the state of Georgia that has ever sat in this seat. And definitely in Georgia, in Grady County, Thomas County, I am the first. And so to know what it took to get there, to know that, I had to rise to a particular level. That was my determination actually to go back to school to get my master's. So I got the things that were required to get, but I know that wasn't enough. There were other things that I had to do. I had to become that person that they knew that they couldn't do without. So that means I had to learn every piece of the puzzle. I had to figure out how things worked and to be able to go in there and unlock those things. Only I, as a Black woman, can pass that on to another Black woman, because men are not opening those doors. Other nationalities are not just opening those doors.
And I'm arguing that we should.
I'm sorry,
I
say
said,
that again?
I'm arguing that we should. That God holds us responsible, not in the sense of you can't do it without me, but the fact that I have held the keys for so long as a person of privilege in this regard, that I got to play a part in your rise.
Yes. And then the fact that it is, in my case, Black men that are holding these keys. To me, it just presents another level of slavery, if you will. Here you've been given this power, and this power, you're taking it and you are depriving somebody else of a space that they should be given, and you have the ability to be able to give it, and you don't open the door to that space. And to me, that's the same mindset, and quite often it is rooted in the same things. Number one, you're fearful. You're fearful of what this woman is bringing to the table is something that you may not have, because anytime God gives you something, it's unique of you. And so you don't see it as something that is an addition to something that can bring greatness to what you're already doing, but you are fearful of it. You're threatened by it. And so the same reasons we were under slavery is because of the threat of what this person holds and what they bring to the table. And then your own feelings of inferiority, feeling like you don't have what it takes. So you hide behind the power, and you hold the power so that, because you don't think enough of yourself that you can open that platform to share it with anybody.
And it's easier, I believe, it's easier to just dismiss what you don't understand or what is outside your comfort zone. There are some people, and it's not limited to men or women or old people or young people, but people in general resist growth and, dare I say, evolution. Like, I'm comfortable with the word evolution in this context. We resist anything that challenges our previous context. And so it's a stretch, to be able to think that, okay, maybe this young person, or maybe this female, or maybe this African American person has something to bring to the table that could help me learn and grow. Because some folk ain't interested in growth.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And the sad part is, though, they missed the boat. They missed the opportunity to grow, because we do know that this uncomfortable feeling that you get because you're in a unfamiliar territory. It's the best feeling that you could. The outcome of that feeling is great.
Yeah.
Because when you start bringing in the freshness of that new mind, when you bring in all the different diversities of people and experiences to the table, it's greater than that table where you have one thought of yourself. And to me, that is so archaic that that the world is going to leave you behind because it's moving in that direction.
Right.
People understand synergy. They understand that it takes all of us, especially if you are a true leader, because a true leader knows that it's about the people that are at the table along with yourself that makes things happen. If you want great things to happen, but if you still want to stay small and not grow and wonder why things are happening everywhere else and it's not happening where you are, then that's why. Because you don't have the mindset and the understanding of true leadership.
Yeah.
That it requires, that it takes all people to be at that table.
Brothers and sisters, this is Man Cave Monday. I am talking with my auntie, my daddy's baby sister, Reverend Janet Stuart, right here from Cairo, Georgia. And we are just talking all things empowerment, encouragement, and affirmation. Y'all go ahead and continue to share this experience as you come in. And we thank you for your comments as well. I want to shift to your current context, what it is that you do every day in the service of people and the demographic of people that you have been called to serve to. Talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, I am with an agency, Thomas Grady Service Center, and I have been there, actually. I was thinking about it today. I've met my 20-year mark.
Wow.
And yes, and
congratulations.
4 of those years, thank you. And I have served as the executive director. I'm in my 4th year. Of experience, I actually, we support people with developmental disabilities, adults, and our focus is to get people to work. It is to get people in positions to be able to have true experiences in the community. It is also to educate our community to learn to value people with disabilities and to value what they bring to the table. We serve, before COVID, about 170 people, and that is considered a pretty good size for an organization. We serve both Grady and Thomasville. Some of the services that we provide is residential. We actually have residential homes that we run 24 hours a day, both in Thomas and Grady. And we also provide work opportunities for people, training and then putting to work. We have 2 contracts with federal government, one in your city, in Tallahassee, where we do the janitorial services for the state buildings there. And we also do FEMA in Thomasville. Training in terms of getting people educated on a skill set that they might be interested in doing and getting them out in the community. But I have always been an advocate for, as you said, the disadvantaged, those people who are often not given the opportunity to have opportunities. And so this was a perfect fit for me. It's something that runs through my family line. Believe it or not, when I went for my interview there, I got home and I got a call and the director there said, "Hey, are you Pinky Simmons' daughter?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And she said, "Well, you have the job." And, I was excited and I stopped a minute and I said, "Well, let me just be clear. Did I get the job because of my credentials or did I get the job because of my mother?" She said, "You got the job because of your mother." So I laughed and I told my mom, I said, I know I have the credentials, but it just says a lot because she once worked there and I didn't realize that was the same place.
Wow. And we got favor, right? You do know that. Favor. I was hanging with Grandma Pinky and Aunt Cheryl a little over a year ago. They had just made one of their trips out of town. We ain't gonna say where they went, but they made one of their trips, and so I picked them up and we stopped by the church to get some of the groceries we were doing at the outreach or whatever. So we took some back, and on my way out of the parking lot, somebody had almost cut us off to the point where they almost hit us. And Grandma Pinky say, They don't know who we are.
Yes,
We Abraham's seed. She said this
yes,
now. We are
yes,
Abraham's seed. If they knew who we
yes,
were, they
yes.
wouldn't have cut us off like that. So
Absolutely.
I just think we've always had favor on that
Yeah,
level.
we have. We have. And I truly have uh, received the favor there. We've been able to do some remarkable things and put a mark on ourselves there. One
Yeah.
of the biggest challenges I had was putting us on the map, letting people know that we were there. And so we have really done a lot in terms of we've had a couple of commercials to run to advertise where we are and get our stories out there on social media.
Hmm.
So we're doing a lot in that area. Just the favor of being able to still be open. There are a lot of organizations that had to close because of COVID. But because we have so many different components to what we do, we were
Hmm.
able to figure out how to do that in spite of COVID. And so we've been very, very fortunate to still have our doors open.
So, what kind of heart, because you spoke about the demographic, what kind of heart do you have to work with and to serve that demographic of people? Because I'm considering that a ministry
Mhm.
that you do every day.
Absolutely.
Everybody's not built for, everybody's not wired
Yeah.
for that kind of work. So, what kind of heart do you have to have every day to go in there and work with those sisters and brothers?
I can honestly say that when they know when you are not real, and so definitely it takes a real, true, sincere heart and a love for people in order to be able to go in and provide that service. When I serve, I look into the eyes of that person and I don't see the disability. I see the abilities that these people possess and can do. And it takes the right heart to be able to see that. They don't need a person who can pity them. They need someone to have empathy, yes, but definitely not someone to pity and to get
Mm,
caught up in the things that they can see that may prevent the person from being able to be their 100. But I can see a 100 in them. And it's because of my desire for them to have the best life that they can have. And
yeah.
so, and even when it comes to hiring people, I look for the heart because people can come in and they can talk a good talk, especially if you've had the tech, the educational training, you can talk a good talk.
Right.
But when it comes to uh, this job, yes, skill sets are important, but I need to know where's your heart. So I do a lot of heart searching when even in our interviews because you know again people can talk a good talk, but it takes a special person to get past those things that some people may not be able to work past
I
because you
agree.
deal with a lot of different things when
I,
it comes to working with people with disabilities.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I love the way you put it because it speaks to really the commandment that all of us have been
All of
given.
them.
That mandate, right? Jesus said
Yes,
somewhere there about Matthew 25, whatever you've done to the least among us,
yes, you've done
however
unto
you've
me.
treated that person in their
Yes,
condition, you've
yes,
done it unto me. And that's not
yes,
just a mandate for Christians or preachers or the church as an institution, but just us as individuals. How you treat your fellow man each and every
yes,
day.
yes,
How you engage those who you may not have every solution for them, but do you care?
yes. Do
Like you
you
said,
care?
folk can tell when you care. Do you have
Yes,
empathy, towards them?
yes,
And if you have the means or the resources or
yes,
the wherewithal to do something to
yes.
improve their condition, are you willing to
Absolutely.
do it? And
Are
I
you
think
willing to
that goes
do
a
it?
long way in
It
your work
does.
and in the work that we do.
It does. And I think the thing that pushes me to be better every day is that I understand and realize that any person can at any time in their life be a person in a position of having a disability. And it doesn't have to necessarily be age. One thing can happen to put us in that position. And I ask myself often, just as an assessment, would I put my mother here?
Mm,
Am I providing a service that I would want to be there? And that's usually my scale to determine Have I slacked in my service? Am I getting comfortable in this? Am I keeping oversight of the services that are being provided by other people?
Yes.
I don't want to get so comfortable and just settle. I
Right.
always want to make sure that the people are receiving the best supports that we can possibly give.
Absolutely. I think it is God's providence that places us where we are. Specifically, like not just profession wise, but even on the map, specifically where we are. Would you agree that it is our rural communities and our smaller demographics, as far as population wise, that sometimes get underserved because of, like big city, you expect there to be a lot of different resources, but in our rural communities, it's lacking. And I think it's why it's so important that you're on tonight. You're not coming to us from Atlanta or Chicago or LA. You're coming to us from Cairo, Georgia. But yet the harvest is so plenteous
Yeah.
right there in Grady and Thomas counties, right? That are smaller, considered country towns. But I believe God's station, and even me in Tallahassee, I consider Tallahassee to be a small town by comparison to where we come from, right?
Right.
I think he's placed us where we are in this season for a particular purpose because they are so underserved and underexposed. But he needs his people there too. You don't have to be in a big city to be impactful. You can make a
Right.
great impact right there where you are.
That is correct. And I think, Jermaine, it goes back to my upbringing. I was around people who made things happen. If we didn't have it, you created it.
Yeah.
And so that I bring to my job. I'm always looking for that out of the box. I don't care about what a center is doing over here. I want to know if there is evidence that there's a need for something, then I'm getting ready to create it so that we can meet that need. And so, yes, there are a lot of things that, by comparisons to larger cities, that we have a deficit in. Transportation, the opportunities for jobs are not as great as they are in other places. So sometimes I got to create a job. I will put together a training that will meet the needs of whatever is available. Right now, we have this huge, beautiful hotel that's coming up. And so we have a janitorial training that's going on that makes it perfect for the services that would be available, that would be needed for that kind of job. So I look out at the city to see what is it in need of, what's there. And sometimes it's about not what's there, but what could they, benefit from.
Yeah.
So I'm getting ready to create that and make
Create
that happen.
it. That's the
That's right.
thing. If it's
Create
not
it.
there, maybe we're supposed to be the ones who put it there, who create it. Honestly, that's the mindset that I brought with me to Tallahassee. Like, because I was never told in my upbringing and in my village, I was never told that I couldn't do something. So even if something wasn't already there, matter of fact, I was told by one individual that I would never name, you don't want to go over there to Jacob Chapel. They got a bunch of problems. They got a bunch of, debt, and you don't want to go. I wouldn't send nobody over there. I wouldn't go over there. I'm like, no, maybe it's an opportunity,
That's an opportunity.
And here we are 15 years later. And I do believe that the situation has been improved and has thrived, because I didn't come in with the mindset of limitations. I wasn't raised to have limits. I was taught that I could do all things. And anybody that's close to me, if they believe, they can do all things too.
Yeah. I'll never forget when I came back to Cairo, I started putting on Kwanzaa's citywide. And I put together a cultural day, but I had to sit at the table with some board members before I could use the site. And there was a doctor, an African American doctor, who sat at that table, and among all of the members that were there, we were the only two that were women of color. And she asked me the question because I was talking about this great day of vendors being there and, having people come in and speak and do all of these different things. And it was just a full day of celebrating culture. And she said, what makes you think that you can do that? And I looked at her and I said, never thought I couldn't. That's just, I don't understand that question
Yeah.
because I just never thought I could not. And so you are right. That's something that's ingrained in us. That's something that we've been told. We don't know anything about the limits of this is a space that you can't go in and you can't create and or take over.
Right. Right.
And it's not a disrespect to anyone, but it's a thing of if I have got something inside of me, it takes away, it deprives others if they don't get a chance to experience it. And that's my thought. My motivation is not to come on bulldozer anybody.
Right.
It's to put it out there because it's not for me so much as it is for the people that's going to benefit from it.
Yes.
That event was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. We had so many vendors to show up from all over. It wasn't just Grady County. And it reached out. And I thought again on the question that the lady asked and her asking that question. And I thought, why would she ask me that? It was so far removed of the idea.
Right.
Why would you ask me that?
Right.
And those are the kinds of things that as a sister, I will pass on to another sister.
And that's already been passed on to the next generation after you, because your daughters and your granddaughters, are producers of things. They are creators, of things. Your youngest daughter, Naima, has opened up her own school, and is an educator of her children and others. She does things within the community that's in that same spirit, that was given to her by you and the generations, before her. So I believe that part of leading is breeding. I believe you ought to recreate yourself in that vein, in that context, because leading does speak to that breeding that we do and continuing the legacy.
Absolutely. And for me, my village passes just, it's not just my family.
Mm-hmm.
Truly, Jermaine, I feel that way about the sisterhood. The sisterhood is real for me. It is not just, a thing that we say. It's not just the phrase of the season. It's real. And it's real every day. The majority of the people that I hire are sisters. And they are young sisters. So they come with sometimes the absent father in the home, and they are the leading person, the head of the person in their home. And so I'm not just their leader of the place. I'm not just the boss, but I'm also the person that they are going to be able to come and sit across my desk and have a conversation. There have been prayers that have taken place in my office, because there's an understanding that I have that no, I may not have gone through the same journey that you took. However, I know the journey because I can identify with the journey. And as a result, I'm going to do more than employ you. You're going to be greater than the person that walked through that door.
And you know what? With us as a people, and I'm talking about Black people, I'm talking about people of African descent, that has always been our mantra. In other words, we are never just a teacher or just an employer, or just a pastor. You're the counselor, you're the therapist, you're the nurse, you're the parole officer, you are the big sister. We have always been all things to each other. And I think when we came over here to America, we learned to be selfish, and we learned to be jealous, and we learned to be territorial. I can't help you advance because you might outdo me. You become my competition instead of my comrade. But what you're talking about, the sisterhood, that's our nature. We have always been more than just whatever our title says, on paper. And you're speaking to that right now.
Yes. And you talked about earlier about us bringing Kwanzaa to the family. And Kwanzaa is, again, not one of those things where it's just celebrated during December month or even during Black History Month, where we look at it as just a cultural thing and we can identify with it. It's my life. And so those principles are things that I measure by. And I definitely measure it when it comes to my relationships with sisters, be it older, younger, even little young girls. I feel a heart emotional tag when it comes to making sure that there's just certain things only another sister can pass on to a little black girl or to a young black woman. But and it also helps me to value what I get when I sit at the feet of my mother or my aunts, or Levon and my sisters, my cousins and my sisters. And I mentioned Levon because there was one thing she said to me. I was going through a time where I was feeling really down about life. And she, with my family, our family, we tell each other's business. So we get to know our business. But what she pulled me to the side and she said, let me tell you something. You don't ever let anybody tell your story. You tell your own story, be it good or bad, and then let it go. And that to me was powerful. But that's what sitting at the feet of my elders do to me. That's what sitting, even with my sisters who I now, when you get a certain age, you're all the same age. So now they're my peers, but they've never stopped sharing. They've never stopped passing on the thing that only a sister can pass on to another sister. And it's just a powerful thing. There's nothing like it. Your sister and I, we were one that would finish each other's sentences. We would put together things and I'd say something and she'd finish it, and because there was a connection that only sisters have. And I can't identify with the sister who doesn't feel responsible for her sister. When I read the words, am I my brother's keeper, replacing that with a sister, it's real. I am my sister's keeper. If my sister is down, I can't be up or feel good about being up until my sister's up. And so just, and
that's
celebrating this month, that is something that I hope that message goes out, because if you don't have it, you need to figure out, where do I need to sit down and go into myself and get it? Because there are so many people who can't share in that. And that's what helps. That is those are the things that prevent us from growing and being able to get through those doors that you've already broken down. We're standing on the shoulders of women before us. I want to be able to hold somebody up on my shoulder. And in order to do that, sometimes you've got to break down the walls of those who've never experienced a woman caring about them and not being in opposition, but being on the same team. Not being threatened by a sister.
This is such a profound conversation, and I'm grateful for it, because it allows all of us, men, women, boys, and girls, to hear from a woman who is very much relatable. I think a lot of times we make heroes out of, I won't say the wrong people, but we make heroes out of celebrities, when in fact there are heroes right among us that we see every day, but we don't appreciate. Like, it's not just Michelle Obama that we should look up to, or Beyonce, for whatever reasons, that we should look up to. But we're talking about a person right here, Reverend Janet Stewart, who is among us and who we should glean from and pull from more often, because she's right there with us. And so those of you who are connecting right now, make sure y'all connect with her on Facebook. She's right here. I've already tagged her in this conversation, so you need to connect with her. She's a big sister. She's that auntie. She gonna be the one that's there for you. Look at me giving you stuff to do, giving you more people to have to minister to. But she is that person. And you mentioned my sister, my late sister, Toya, and how she was so affirming. And she never had children biologically of her own, but she mentored so many boys and girls who turned into young men and women. Even at her homegoing celebration, those young women and young men that came back, 20 years later and said, Miss Jenkins, made me who I am today, and she loved on me, and she, that's the gift that all of us have been given, and we don't know how long we have. She was blessed to live 45 years, and then the Lord decided to take her from us. But her impact is still being felt right now. in
Yeah.
you and me and all the other
Yeah.
lives that she has touched. And of course, y'all remind me so much of each other, just that energy and that spirit. So it's refreshing to even be able to talk to you now.
Yeah. And that just brings me to, the thought, the influence, the impact, leaving it,
Yeah.
leaving something. That's huge.
Yeah.
Um, we're here for a purpose, and it didn't. That didn't just come by my calling in terms of being a purpose, but my parents told me I was here for a purpose. You enjoy life, but don't waste it.
Yeah.
There's something that you are to do, and your light can't be just shining just for you.
Just for
The community was good to me. My church family was good to me growing up.
you. Yeah.
Teachers, because they lived in the same neighborhood, they were good to me. And
Mm.
so I don't know anything else but the responsibility of giving back.
Mm.
And so when you talk about leaving that was the person that Latoya was. It was important to her to leave something. It was
Yes.
important to her to be a positive influence. And so, that is who I am. It's very
Absolutely.
important for that. And so I'm very
Absolutely.
passionate when it comes to, and even when you talk about the times that, you ran away to my house or we've sat down and had our talks, I just always felt like that was a gift that God gave me to be approachable,
Hmm.
and definitely with younger people. You and I have shared some stories that I wouldn't dare repeat, but
Amen.
I felt fortunate that
Amen.
you would come to me and be able to have those conversations. I
Yeah.
remember even when I first moved to Grady County, my house was the house for the children. And they
Yeah.
would come and we would call them counseling sessions,
Yeah.
once again, trying to be an influencer in a positive way.
Yeah.
Very important to me.
And so for that reason, we celebrate you. Um,
Thank you.
we appreciate who you are, and so much look forward to what God still has in store for you, because He's not finished. If I'm allowed to speak something into my auntie's life, you are just getting started with what the Lord has in store for you, because you've already been impactful, and God said that if you are faithful over the little things, that He will make you ruler over many. God knows He can trust you, with those little things. And because you've been such a good steward over those little things, you're going to continue to be moved into spaces that only God knows, and you have not even imagined. So thank you for taking the time to do this. And I know it took, it took some doing. You were so nervous, but I mean, it came through, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to do it.
Thank you. I am so privileged I'm humbled to have been asked. It was a great experience, and I appreciate it. It felt good being in the man
In
cave.
the man cave, you have invaded the
I
man
have
cave,
invaded
the
the
first
man.
woman, and now the door is
Yeah.
wide open. And I'm proud because next week I will have the principal of my alma mater, University High School. She is a classmate, class of '97, Janique Hamilton, in my graduating class. She is going to be my guest next Monday, and she's the principal of the school now.
Okay.
So I cannot
Okay.
wait. But ladies and gentlemen, this has been another edition of Man Cave Monday. Don't forget to share this interview with somebody, and also subscribe to our YouTube page, Pastor Jermaine Simmons. The link is right there in the chat. Auntie, thank you so much. Love you.
Love you back.
Thank you. We'll see you all very, very soon. And again, guys, share this with somebody. Thank y'all for watching tonight, and we'll look forward to seeing y'all on next week.
Thank you.